Well, hello. It's party time. It's party time here at Pop Gus's. Oh, how are you, millennials? I think there's more than millennials that watch me, but I speak mainly to the millennials. But I'm in my early 70s, and I feel like a millennial. I have a short attention span. I like technology. I'm right in there with y'all. I feel like a millennial at heart. I feel like I'm about 17. I felt that for a long time. But anyway, well, I have a song for you today. Kind of speaks for itself. Called Holy Ground. I don't even know who wrote it. Just always heard it in church. So I'm just going to play it and sing it. We are standing on holy ground, and I know that there are angels all around. Let us pray Jesus now, for we're standing in His presence on holy ground. Holy ground. We're standing on holy ground. For the Lord is present, and where He is holy. Holy ground. We're standing on holy ground. For the Lord is present, and where He is holy. Oh, we are standing on holy ground, and I know that there are angels all around. Oh, let us praise Jesus now, for we're standing in His presence. We are standing in His presence. We're standing in His presence. Holy ground. Well, I could sing that song for a couple more hours. Wow. Anyway, holy ground. We'll get back to that. We'll get back to that in the spiritual. Oh, got to do the practical though. There's always a practical thing that I like to share with my millennials. Today, I have this on my heart. When you travel in your car, or if you travel in somebody else's car a lot, it's a good idea to have a fire extinguisher on board. Or a big gallon of water, like an old milk jug filled with a gallon of water. just in case. Now I have a story to tell. I was out in the Arizona desert one time, driving along, and there was nothing around, man. There was no towns, no nothing, and it was hot, and it was desolate. It was a desert, and came upon this lady with children in her car, and her car was on fire. The carburetor, well, you don't know what that is, but when you lift the hood, we used to have in the old days carburetors. That's how the fuel goes down, went down into the motor and made it run. Nowadays it's called fuel injection, and it squirts the fuel right straight into the cylinders, right into the motor to make it run. But in the old days it was carburetors. And anyway, this lady had a problem, and she knew her car was on fire, but the hood was down. So I went over and opened the hood, and it flamed. There was flames coming up. And she had children, and no man with her. And I had a gallon of antifreeze. Actually, it was water in an antifreeze bottle or canister thing. And I was watching this thing, and I'm thinking, okay, get everybody away safe. Then I thought, you know what? I'm going to sit here or stand here and watch this car burn up. Because if that little bit of fire that's on there now doesn't get dealt with, it's going to catch on. It's going to go down through the fuel area, down to the fuel tank in the back, and blow up. And he'll have this huge, you know, car burning. And I didn't want to get near it because it was dangerous. I didn't want to get blown up. But I fought through the fear and grabbed my bottle of what do you call it, antifreeze or water in the antifreeze bottle, and ran over to it. And it was plastic, so when I squeezed it, the bottle, when I took the lid off and squeezed it, it shot the water out, right? And I got over there thinking, oh boy, any second this thing's going to blow up and I'm going to be a crispy critter. And so, but I ran up there and I got up to the motor and I squeezed it and aimed it right at the carburetor. And by the grace of God, the wash of water that came out put the fire right out. And so, I mean, still wasn't quite right. I mean, it still had a problem with the car, but at least the fire was out and we could do something with it. So there you have it. But that little thing that I had in my car, that little extra gallon of water, or that had been a fire extinguisher. Another time I was about to pull out of a little store, and there was a motorcycle in front of me, and there was a car coming, and I waited for the car, and the motorcycle pulled out, and he had time, but the car didn't see him. And boy, he ran into that motorcycle, and there was a girl and a guy on the cycle, and I mean, it was not pretty. But anyway, the motorcycle was burning, and the guy who owned the motorcycle running around on a broken foot. And where's the fire extinguisher? And I didn't have one in my car, but I ran into the store that was right there, and they had one. And I ran out and handed it to him. He was able to put the fire out. But I mean, there's two little instances just in my life where it would have been handy to have a fire extinguisher or a big gallon of water to work with to try to take care of a situation. You never know. So I just encourage you. You have a car in the back, in the trunk. There's got to be a little corner somewhere. Take a gallon jug, fill it up. In the winter, if you use just water, it will freeze. So it'd be good to put some kind of antifreeze type stuff in there. Maybe even a gallon of that windshield washer fluid. That'll work too. But in any case, something that would come in handy in a situation like that. Because if a fire starts in a car, man, there's all that plastic that it's made out of. That thing will just burn right straight up. Okay? There's a little safety issue for you. It's better, for real, to have a fire extinguisher. You know, a gallon of water is the cheap way to do it. That's the way Pop Gus does it. anyway, let me move on to the spiritual. There was a guy in the Old Testament. His name was Moses, and everybody's heard of Moses. Well, Moses was called by God to go and get his people out of slavery to the Egyptians. They were enslaved because they had come down there and became so prolific that there was like millions. And the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, was concerned because he said, "Jesus, people there's so many that they're going to rebel and take over. You can't have that." So he enslaved them, made sure there were no weapons in their camp, and all the things that leaders do, that kings and stuff do to keep people from being any kind of viable force against them. In any case, Pharaoh made it very difficult on the people of God, the Israelites, and that was Moses' people. Well, through one thing and another, Moses ends up out in the desert. He goes out there when he's about 40 years old, and he'd actually been raised in Pharaoh's court, in the court of the king, through mistaken identity. He was considered to be an Egyptian, but then found out he was actually not. He was actually an Israelite. And because he was such a man of integrity, he said, "I got to be with my people. I can't live this lie anymore." So when he went about living no lie, he was not dealt with nicely, and they banished him. So out he went to the desert. And when I say desert, I mean desert. I mean snakes. I mean scorpions. I mean a well every so often that everybody kind of lives around for their water supply. And hard times, hard Scrabble life, right? So here's Moses out in the desert. Now he's 80 years old, okay? I'm not 80 years old yet. I can't imagine taking care of sheep, being a shepherd out in the desert, uh, living that kind of a life. But there he was at 80. And he was still strong. He was still the man. And he's walking along one day with his sheep, looking for grass and stuff for the sheep to eat. And sees this bush, and it's on fire. But the funny thing about it was, it's on fire, but it's not being burned up. It's just like the fire is burning, the bush is not being consumed, not being burned. And he said, in the Bible it says, he says, "I will turn aside and look at this." So he's walking this way, he turns aside to go see it. Right? I just love the way the Bible puts stuff. And so he turned aside to go see what this wonder was. And as he starts to approach the bush, he hears a voice, and the voice says, "Take your shoes off, because the ground that you're standing on is holy ground." And he starts to get the idea, a little more than a burning bush here. I hear a voice telling me to take my shoes off. Middle of the desert, stones, rocks, and everything else, thorns and thistles. I'm taking my shoes off, but he obeyed. He got those shoes off in a hurry. And he approached the bush, and God spoke to him out of that flaming fire, out of that burning bush, and gave him a whole plan to go back to Egypt from where he was in the desert and bring about the freedom of the Israelites, the people of God. And he was going to use Moses to do that. But he had to take his shoes off because he was on holy ground. Because where the Lord is present, that is holy. That place is holy. And you know, there have been times in all of our lives where I guess you can call it a burning bush experience. Have you ever had a burning bush experience? A time, a day when you felt like something outside of yourself was talking to you and encouraging you to do something that you maybe had never thought of, or maybe you had thought of, and maybe it was a dream in your heart, and the voice said, now it's time. Go for it. Go for your dream. Go for what you know in your heart to be yours. And I'm sure that when Moses was out in that desert for all those 40 years that he was out there, now he wasn't doing nothing. He actually was raising a family. He had a wife and he had two boys. And and the wife had her father and a bunch of sisters. And, so I mean, he had a family there. There was people that he was part of. But you know, there was something going on in his life. It wasn't like he was standing there all alone with his sheep. But that was his life for 40 years. Don't ever think that God can't use you because of whatever your age might be. You might be 40 years old, you might be 35, you might be 25, and you might have think, wow, my life has passed me by. My my shot at life, my purpose in life is gone. I missed the boat. I didn't take the chance that I should have taken, so on and so on. I just give you Moses at 80 years old, after living an incredible life, because the first 40 years of his life, he was in Pharaoh's court, and he was like high up in his court. He was like a son to Pharaoh. In fact, he might have been the next king if he had stayed with the Egyptians and not taken back his Israelite heritage. But be that as it may, he lived quite a life for the first 40 years. The second 40 years, I guess mainly it was to get the first 40 years out of him. In other words, that all that learning that he had in Pharaoh's court was, you know, they had a bunch of different gods and they had all kind of goofy stuff going on spiritually. They didn't believe in the God of the Bible. Didn't believe in him at all. They had all kind of weird things. So anyway, God calls Moses at 80 years old. And if you look at his ministry from 80 years old, he lived to be 120. And the Bible says his eye was still sharp as any young man, and his muscle was still as strong as any young man. In other words, he was still vitally alive at 120 years old. So if we can look at Moses and think, wow, maybe it's never too late. And maybe we're right on God's timetable and God's plan. Now, I'm not saying you should get lazy and just not do anything. And we should all seek to know what it is that the Lord wants us to do with our lives. But don't get so caught up in it and crazy about it, like thinking you might have missed it. With God, you don't necessarily miss it. He has a way of working you around to where you will be face to face with your destiny. He has a way of planning your life and causing the things to happen in your life to where you come, like I said, face to face with your destiny, with your plan, the plan He made for your life. You know, I was 36 years old until I came to the Lord. And I was not doing much with my life. Not much more than party man party. And it was one party to the next. Yeah, I worked, had a little job, a little business of my own. And I made enough money to live, pay my rent, and do all that. But come time, I was partying whenever I had enough. And but there came a day when God worked my life in such a way that I came and turned and turned, and I was a bartender, I was a house painter, I was a drinker, I was a wild man. But he turned little by little by little. And at 36 years old, I came face to face with him. Face to face, literally. I actually saw the Lord. And boy, I'll never forget it. It's like it happened. That was 36 years ago, because now I'm double that. I was 36, now I'm 72. In any case, I'll never forget it. It was like it happened an hour and a half ago. It's like fresh in my memory. When God touches your heart, and when God brings you to a place of face to face with your destiny, you'll never forget it. And so ever since then, I've walked with Him. And that's why I know stuff about the Bible, and that's why I know stuff about life. Because I've kept my eyes open and tried to keep my mouth shut. Although that doesn't go so well all the time. In any case, if you come face to face with Him, you'll come face to face with your destiny. And boy, when you do that, take hold of it. Take hold of it. Don't get crazy, but take hold of it. Lean back into those everlasting arms. That's what the Bible says, that God has His everlasting arms around you. Just lean into Him. Let Him tell you what to do. Let Him guide your life. Oh, what a beautiful thing to do. And everybody will say, oh, He is so cool. He does this, He does that. And you know all along, man, if it wasn't for Him. I have to laugh sometimes. People say, oh, you do this so well, you do that. And they have no idea that God set it all up for me. He made me look like a real winner. He's done that so many times. I give Him the glory for it. Right now, I'm giving Him the glory. Okay? I'm making sure you know that God gets all the glory from life. Anything good is from Him. Anything not good, I probably did it. So, there you have it. Anyway, God bless you. I love you guys. I'm so glad to sit here and talk to you so often. So, this is Pop Gus, and I'm coming at you. I'm going to be coming at you, and I'm going to keep coming at you because I love you, because I want to help you. Because there's certain things that we skate over in life and think everybody knows, but not necessarily true. So don't forget to put a gallon of water or a fire extinguisher in your car. It's a good thing to have. And look at how it works too, so you know how to get to it quickly. Because when there's something going off and something going down and there's a fire, you get a little bit nervous. Well, when you get nervous, you don't always do things, you know, thoughtfully. So if you look at that thing and figure out how it works, don't do it yet, but read the directions ahead of time. They're not hard to run. They're not hard to work. They're very simple. But when you're excited and something's going down and there's been a car accident and adrenaline gets to pumping. So look it over, see how it works, and be ready, just in case. Never know. Okay? So I want you to be safe, and I want you to know stuff, and that's knowing some stuff. So God bless you. I love you, Millennial. And anybody else that happens to be watching as well. I love you too. You don't have to be from 20 to 40 or whatever millennials are. I don't even know. You can be older, you can be younger, you can be anywhere. I know this. I love you, but God, oh boy, does He love you. Woo. His love is so fiery and real. Oh my goodness. You touch His love, you'll never forget it. Never. Take it to the bank. You'll never forget God's love. Okay. Have a great day. Bye bye.